Wisconsin Attorney General, current Waukesha County Judge, and candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court, Brad Schimel is our very special guest on The Big Show today, February 27th, 2024. For Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, I'm Dryden Wire founder Ben Dryden, and you are watching Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy, presented by Professional Exteriors and Interiors. With 20 years of experience, this locally owned and operated business provides quality work both on the inside and on the outside of your home or business. Like Fitzy and I, they believe it's the little things that make a big difference. Give them a call today, see what they can do for you. 715-520-2271. Fitzy, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm fantastic. We have Brad Schimel on. Brad, what's up?
Right.
Hey, good morning. It's great to see you, Sheriff. It's been a little while. I miss working with
you. We miss you, trust us.
Yeah. What are you talking about? Let's not get in too much trouble on today's show. Let's go one show. That's right. I keep forgetting that you guys knew each other, because you were the former, obviously, you were the Attorney General. So I'd love it if you had like a story about Fitzy that we can use against him at some point.
They're all good.
I don't. You know what? He's a solid guy. I mean, whenever I needed anything, if we were working on trying to deal with the opiate epidemic, methamphetamine, he taught me an awful lot about what things are like up in the northwest part of the state with challenges you had. He was always there when I needed him to educate other people, to get them on board to help solve the problem. You guys are lucky in Barron County with a great sheriff up there.
Yeah, we'll appreciate it. And you were always there for us, leading the way.
Yeah.
Obviously, the DOJ and everybody. I mean, you always supported law enforcement. That's what we loved about you. And we felt the love. Now it's a little rougher here, getting better. But let's if you've seen Sheriff Scott Knutson's little Facebook post last night, he let everybody have it. So you got to go to the St. Clair County Sheriff's Department Facebook page and see
after the show.
Before we get too far, I haven't seen you in years, Chris. I'm really sorry for the horrible year that you guys had in northwestern Wisconsin last year with Katie and Emily and Hunter. Wow, what a terrible year.
Yeah, it was crazy. Just last night we went to the Cameron band concert, their high school band concert, and they dedicated a whole song to law enforcement. So we took 6 of our cops there, and it was very powerful, very moving. I mean, Ben and I say it all the time, it's the little things that make a big difference. I mean, they didn't have to do that, but the band director stood up there and said, we got to thank cops every day, not just when something bad happens. That's what you did, Brad, and I appreciate that. You always put cops out there. If there's a bad cop, there's a bad cop, but there's good cops every single day of the week. And that band director said it. People cheered last night. It wasn't because something bad happened and we needed to do something. It was just, let's do something. It's Monday night. Let's have a band concert and let's dedicate a song. It was really cool.
Yeah. And I saw personally from all my years in the DA's office in Waukesha, lost some good friends in law enforcement to suicide too. And, we lose 4 times as many to suicide as we do duty deaths. And we owe it to them to do things, to work on wellness, to keep them not just physically safe on the job, but mentally, emotionally safe too. And we did great things as a team.
And we talk about it a lot more. And a lot of people are like, ooh, we shouldn't talk about that. And we're not afraid to talk about that anymore and ask for help and do different things. And so I think that's super important, what you just brought up, and to not be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, I think the stigma, Fitzy, you and I have talked about that before in the show. I think I've asked you, is that maybe it was like a year or two ago. Is it okay now to, because I know, Brad, my father being the sheriff that he was for 28 years, so you know him, that old school stuff, you don't talk about things. Right, not to your family, not to anyone else. It's not okay to do this. If you have to go, the only reason you're going to go to a therapist is if you're ordered to go. But you don't talk about it publicly, which I understand a lot of the reasonings why. But is there still that stigma? And you said that a little bit. This is like a year ago, so maybe there's an update. But it's getting better. That was the last I recall. Is that still the same thing, Fitzy? And also for you, Brad, is that kind of what you still see with the sheriffs that you still talk to?
Yeah, I think we talk about it a lot more. We talk about EAPs, and we have them for our people. We let them go when they need to, and some days we mandate them to go. but then they go on their own afterwards, and I think that's important. So I think we've got it going on. It's not perfect. Again, no system is perfect, but it's what it is, and we recognize it a lot more. We talk about it internally. We reach out to each other. We're not afraid to go meet with somebody. I mean, Holly Hakes Wellness Solution is been great for us and our team, and Real Living, our EAP program for the county is good, and it's countywide. It's not, as social workers see different things, our child porn detectives see different things. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that is, it's not so much the major cases, it's the everyday cases that we see that drive, that get to us sometimes.
Right. Yeah. I think it is getting better. Every couple months I'll get a call from one of the chaplains. When I was at DOJ, we certified and trained over 400 police chaplains, and it takes a specialized touch. I mean, these are all people who are pastors in their churches, and they're used to taking care of their flock. But good luck trying to tell a law enforcement officer that they're a sheep. It doesn't work that well. You have to take a little bit different approach. And so we trained them up, and every few months I'll get a call from one of them that'll remind me, hey, Brad, I can't tell you the details, of course, but I want to let you know I met with an officer the other day, and there's another one that's still out there on duty, and because there was help for them. And so I know they're reaching out, and elections happen, they come and go, you win, you lose. But if there were good things you tried to do, if you put your heart in the right place, try to get those things done, nothing can ever change the good that happened.
Yeah, and I forget sometimes that you were also the district attorney. You had brought that up. So you were the district attorney in Waukesha County, then attorney general, then judge, which you currently are in Waukesha. Before we get into the big part, of course, is that you're running for Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Now that as a judge, I'm sure when you were a district attorney, you probably looked at the judge and like, come on. Like Fitzy and I do on the show a lot, where it's, what kind of a bond? Are you freaking kidding me? A signature bond, you moron, right? So as a district attorney, you kind of see it from that perspective, that angle, through that lens. Now you're the judge. Is okay.
Like, touching that one. I didn't think he was going to.
Different. Now, like, at least now I understand a little bit more what judges had to go through, and maybe it isn't as cut and dry or black and white as you maybe saw it, or we all see it outside looking in.
You're objective. As a prosecutor, you're an advocate, and you've met with the victim.
Sure.
You've met with the law enforcement officers. You come in, you're advocating a side. As a judge, you're objective, and you've got to balance a lot of different things. And the dangerous ones, they need to get locked up and stay locked up. But that's not most people. I mean, Chris, it's 75, 80% have some mental health problem, have some substance abuse problem, or both. And, they're not inherently evil. We can try to help them, but, there's consequences for actions. And if you cross certain lines, you point a gun at the clerk at the Quick Trip, you gotta stay put. We gotta keep you away from the rest of us.
Yeah. There was that bill that came out. What was that, Fitzy? It was last year, April, on a referendum. Right, that allowed judges to consider a couple more. There's like two things that got passed. I can't remember exactly where, but one was like considering their criminal history, and I think the other one was, what was it, safety or community safety, Fitzy? Was that it?
Right. It didn't have to just the lack of not or coming to court. They could consider other factors.
Yeah.
The state of Wisconsin overwhelmingly passed that for our judges.
Yeah. No. Well, you were the judge when this happened. So was there a big difference between before that and afterwards? Have you used it a lot? Do you see it's been useful, or is it just another proverbial tool in the toolbox?
Well, it was a constitutional amendment, so It was big. It was a big deal to make this change. Before the amendment, there was kind of a wink to the whole thing. You'd look at the guy and say, well, he's never had any flight risk. He's probably going to stay put. He's got ties to the community. But they did something really shocking, really outrageous. You'd kind of say, based on what you did, there's a decent chance you're going to get a long prison sentence. So now the stakes are higher.
Yeah.
You got a lot of incentive to take off on us. So there was kind of a wink to it. We weren't really being honest about what we would really take into account. Now we can be honest and say, no, you're dangerous. We have to keep you separated from society. We just be honest about that. I think it's much better.
That's a good point. I never thought about that before. But you're right. Before that, there were, a murder. It's $1 million cash bond for. There was one a few years ago in our area that I think it was like $1 million. I think we've had a few of those $1 million cash bonds. That was before that was changed. And yeah, there's been other ones that were similar to that, but much, much less. And that actually makes a lot of sense. It's a lot more transparency, and this is what it is.
Right.
So you were on with, I think you were on with us back in November. So you announced that you're running for Supreme Court. And a lot of people had asked. I think when I was telling Fitzy that you were going to be on, so you were on like on a Thursday or Friday morning or something, and then Fitzy and I were doing our show on Tuesday, and I announced that you were going to be coming on. And he said, why is he announcing so soon? So I said, I think he's going to be announcing he's running for something, but I don't know what. Yep. I mean, we all knew what, but I didn't say anything at the time. And he's like, why would he be announcing for anything so soon? And I've read a lot of stories about that too. So just to kind of recap for people who didn't see that, why did you announce that you're running for Supreme Court so quote unquote soon, like 17 months out?
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody's ever announced that early for a Supreme Court race, 16 months. It's kind of crazy. Why would I put myself and my family through this far out? I mean, I'm already campaigning 4 counties every weekend. We're traveling the state. Last Saturday, we put 650 miles on, going up to Fond du Lac and then up to Eau Claire. And then we ended the night at St. Croix County and then turned around and had a 4.5-hour drive back to Waukesha. It's kind of a crazy deal, but too many people have entered these races and thought, well, you can just raise all sorts of money and then run TV ads and you'll win the election. Well, that's not working. You got to get out there. You got to shake hands. You got to talk to people. And most importantly, you have to listen to people, because if you listen to what makes them tick, it makes you a better candidate, and it's going to make you a better public servant if you win election to that office. So that's what I'm all about. And you can't run a 72 county race in Wisconsin getting in with 6 months to go. It's impossible. It is to drive from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, down here in Waukesha, up to Washburn on Lake Superior. That is over 6 hours. I can drive to St. Louis faster than I can drive to there. Right. So you start thinking about all the counties up there. You got to get to all of them. You need the time. And there's not going to be a county in the state that isn't going to have some visits from me. And I'm going to be there to hear what matters to them, because I want to be their servant. And how can I be their servant if I don't check in?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Eric Toney did that with his election, and I know he lost, but that's what it took, and it took time and effort to get to all 72. And the local little counties, and I consider us little counties in Northwest Wisconsin, appreciate that when someone from Madison realizes that. Romaine does a good job of keeping Northwest Wisconsin on the map. Dave Armstrong does it. Eric Toney did it, and I know you will, Brad, too. And that's what it takes is to, like you said, to check in. Yeah, I'm the sheriff. I'm running too. I mean, I'm 3 years away from the sheriff race, but I'm running again. Everybody,
you always say every year is an election year.
Every year is an election year. Right. So.
Yeah.
You're a public servant. And I think, frankly, there's too many that forget that, that you're a public servant. You're not in this to get rich. You're not in this for power. You are in this to help the people that you're supposed to be serving. And that does mean you're campaigning all the time, because you always have to be checking in with with them on what matters, what's important.
Well, ideally, there are some elected individuals that don't actually do that. They just, we're going to gloss over that because we're not going to get in trouble on today's show. These 5 counties, Brad, I don't know how you pronounce this one. Ozaukee, is that how you say it?
Ozaukee.
Oh, yeah. Ozaukee, Washington, Brown, Outagamie, and Winnebago. I was reading a story this morning. What is it?
Outagamie.
Yeah. Yeah. Who comes up with these names? I like Brown. That's a good one.
More, Ben, you should run for something and learn more about the state of Wisconsin.
A lot of them have Native American roots, just like Wisconsin.
Oh, that
Milwaukee,
makes sense.
All those things. Yeah.
Okay. So of those 5, what do all those have in common? I was reading a story this morning and said that these 5 are the most important. I can't remember what it was. Urban Milwaukee, I think it was an article. So I Googled your name this morning and just clicked news to see what came up. And that was like one of the first ones. And it was an article that was done, and it was in there. It said that there was those 5 counties you have to win. Republican has to win, or a conservative has to win. I think they were looking at your attorney general's race. I think that's what it was, and saying that these are the big counties. So Waukesha, along with these 5 counties. I'm assuming all those counties are in your area, and if so, are the southeastern southeastern part. Those are all down there, right?
Yes, and those are for me. All of those are easy. I mean, those are things where I'm an hour and a half away. I can be there over and over again. Those, frankly, are simple.
So that's
It's getting
beneficial,
all the rest of the state
right? Right. Which is going back to the original question of why so early, announcing so early. It's how do you get to all the 67 other counties when you only announce like 2 months before and you have a full-time job?
Exactly. And this is all about moving margins. Take in Milwaukee, large black population. I don't know that in any time in the near future that a conservative candidate's going to win the black population outright, that will get more than 50%. But by being there, talking to them, working with them on the problems that they care about, you can move the margins. You can move the percentages up. Same thing. Get up to Eau Claire County. Move the numbers. That's all you have to do to win. You don't have to win everybody's vote, but you gotta keep moving the ball forward. That's why I've got to be in this so early.
Yeah, I thought I was reading it was a CBS Morning News with Gayle King and the bunch. This was about 6 months ago, a year ago. I think it was after the Jacob Blake, and they were talking about the black population in Wisconsin, and they had stated on the show that 70% of Wisconsin African-American population lives in one county, and that's Milwaukee County, which I didn't know that. I mean, that's a significant portion. I thought it was a little more dispersed, but apparently not. The other thing that in that article that I was reading, it said that out of the 120 justices in Wisconsin's history, only 3 previously elected incumbents have ever lost. So you'd be running against Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, who I think she was elected when I was in high school. So it's got to be like 30 years-ish that she's been on the bench. And then looking up those numbers, the incumbent of an previously elected incumbent, only 3 times out of 120 have they lost. These are odds that statistically tell you just enjoy being a judge and retire happily. And don't run for anything else. So what was the decision and said, you know what, I don't care about any of those numbers. I'm doing it.
The circuit judge gig is nice. We have a private bathroom. You set your hours. I mean, seriously, it's under Supreme Court rules. We have to have a private bathroom. I think that's crazy. I'm not giving it up, but it's kind of goofy. I set the hours. Certainly I've got to get my cases done, but I can decide, you know what, if I want to do golf on Thursday afternoon, I can do that. All the lawyers, they got to come to court when the judge tells them.
Right.
I don't lord that over anybody. Believe me, I work all day and into the evening, trying to get it right. But it is a good gig from that. I'm home for dinner most nights now. I shoot in 2 sporting clays leagues, or I was until I made this announcement. I was shooting 2 sporting clays leagues a week. I was doing all this, playing band rehearsals every week. We got together to play. Now, they're a little more stretched out. We're still going to play gigs, but I can't get together and have fun rehearsing. All that's changed now. Now I'm back to the point that my family's not going to be able to pick me out of a lineup again. But I feel called to do this. Right now, I'm concerned that, courts have low popularity. People don't respect them. I haven't seen one for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, but the U.S. Supreme Court, less than 50% of people look up to them now. That's a problem. If the justice system's going to be credible and it's going to do the right things for people, people have to respect that it's objective, that it's working hard, that there's integrity. I want to restore that. We can't have justices out on the campaign trail promising the end result on cases. That's wrong. No litigant should come to court knowing they lost their case already just based on the face sitting up on the bench up there. You should come into court knowing you're going to get a fair shake and you're going to get listened to objectively and fairly. We have to restore that because everything we count on relies on the justice system being dependable, having integrity, and people have confidence in it.
Fitzy and I have talked on the show about numerous positions that you kind of have one job to do, right? Just do that. Don't remove your personal opinion. Fitzy's even had to do that in his job as a sheriff. It's not my personal opinion what I want to do or what laws I think we should actually enforce and which laws I shouldn't. My job is to enforce that. My job as a sheriff, what is under this umbrella, that's what I do. And the same thing for judges. We usually talk about it from a local judge standpoint, but certainly it could be applicable to Supreme Court justices. So two things here, and I'm trying to tie these together, is the one, did they give a reason why that is now down to 50%? And if not, do you believe this because, at least from the lens I see it lately, and each year it gets more and more so, it seems to be more partisan. For a nonpartisan election, it seems to be very partisan. And more now than I've ever remembered. Maybe I'm just paying attention to it more now than ever before. But is that particularly a reason why it is that way? That the percentage is down? And does that then have any tie into what you just said about people already having their opinions made up before they're even elected into a position? Are all of these things tied together some way, or are they all different?
No, I think they are tied together. And I think too often people are running judicial campaigns like you'd run a governor's campaign,
right?
Promising, I'm going to put this policy in place. I'm going to do this. All you should be promising as a candidate for court is that you are going to listen objectively. You are going to adhere to the Constitution. You're going to respect the rule of law, and you are going to treat all litigants fairly, that everyone gets fairly heard in the court of law, and do your best to get to a just outcome. And we can't keep running court races like a governor's race. Now, I'm going to hit hard in this because there are differences between Ann Walsh Bradley and I. I worked hard as Attorney General to help get Marcy's Law, also another constitutional amendment. I worked hard to get that passed, get it through the legislature, and then got out in front of the public to make sure they voted for it. And we passed it overwhelmingly. Ann Walsh Bradley was the sole voice on the Wisconsin Supreme Court who would have struck down that constitutional amendment. There have been other things in her history where she has not respected victims' rights the way I think she should have. And I'm going to point those things out. But that's not politics. That's a fair criticism in my view.
Well, I think that's normal.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if people are deciding between two things.
Talk about your record.
Right. I mean, Jerusha, my wife, she didn't have to marry me. If there's another person, she's going to figure out, see which one is actually better. Now, thankfully for me, I won by default because I didn't have anybody else competing against, which is my favorite way of winning anything is by default.
You avoided a primary.
I completely avoided it.
I'm hoping to do that too.
Ben is running for something though, Brad. He's running for what?
Waukesha County Board Chair. But again, I don't have any competition. That's the only reason I'm doing it. Hey, there's a question on here from Tiffany. Okay, silly question. What does a Wisconsin Supreme Court judge or justice do? And do they do anything in particular for county courts? Great question, Tiffany.
Well, the Supreme Court oversees the entire court system. So they do make sure that judges in the county courts have the resources they need. They advocate for that. They make sure the judges are well trained. They make sure the judges are following the ethical rules. I've got some doubts about whether everybody on the Supreme Court has been following the ethical rules, but yeah, what?
What?
Hey, the Judicial Commission said nothing to see here, so I guess it's over. But the Supreme Court does have that supervisory responsibility. But then ultimately, they hear cases when they don't really just correct errors. That's what the courts of appeals do. If a judge gets it wrong on ruling on an objection or letting some evidence in during a trial, that's what the appellate courts do. The Supreme Court gets involved in cases where someone needs to take a look at the law and decide whether there needs to be a change in how the law works, or whether someone has not been following precedents that should guide us in how we make rulings, so that there's consistency and predictability in the law. Without some predictability in the law, it's chaos out there. It's important to people who employ people in Wisconsin that they know what the rules are, and that they're not going to change willy-nilly based on the whim of some judge or Supreme Court justice. So the Supreme Court has important roles that way. They take very few cases relative to, a circuit court judge. I don't know how many cases I get in a year, 1,000. At the Supreme Court, the 7 of them, I think this year they're only going to hear 50 or 60 cases. That's it. Yeah, I think that's a little low. I think they could be working a little harder, but that's generally in the range.
Sure. Well, Fitz and I have talked, I think, in the past as well in shows about that consistency. that I don't understand how. Well, in this case, we'll just say Supreme Court, even though I don't think we've talked about this specific scenario, but. I'll apply it here. If there's 7 justices, or look at the Supreme Court, maybe this is a part of the reason there's less than 50% of approval or people that respect that Supreme Court justices is in federal level. That 7 of them all come to, first of all, it's like 4-3 a lot of times. Maybe not all the time, but the ones we hear about typically like a 4-3. So that's weird. First of all, I feel like everybody should be all the time, but I understand maybe why not. But then when there's a change and one person's gone, another person's in, now all of a sudden it's a different outcome. And they bring it back, and I don't understand that. I mean, I do, but I don't like that. Like if it was, we agreed this is what it was, and this is how the Constitution, we believe this is what it was stating, and this is the question that was brought to us. This is how we decided what it should be. But then a year later, or 2 years, or 5 or 10 years, then it comes back, and now we've changed our minds. Is that good? Is that healthy that we keep revisiting those, or is that a bad thing? Because I can see benefits of both.
Yes and no. Sometimes things change that you need to take a second look at things, but generally there should be the precedents that are set should be respected in courts, and the Supreme Court should avoid, if they can, overruling precedents lightly. You shouldn't do that. It's hard for the legislature to anticipate everything that's going to happen. They pass a law, the world changes, technology changes. I mean, a lot of the laws on the books, well, almost all the laws on the books, I should say, were passed before we had an internet, before we were dealing with some of the things that happened because of that. When I was an assistant DA, we rarely got high-speed pursuit cases. But when you got them, you kind of wrangled as an assistant DA to get the case because they were going to be interesting. It was going to be kind of a fun, energetic, exciting thing to deal with. Now, I'll tell you, they happen all the time. It is routine that people take off from law enforcement. Really? I don't know if they're watching those video games that it's all about trying to outrun the police, but
those are incredibly
dangerous. Yeah, but I don't know what it's doing to our young people where they're taking these terrible risks. I mean, I can't talk about any specifics like names or anything, but I do have we have some cases here in Waukesha where a group came up from Chicago, young people, went to a real high-end auto dealership like Range Rovers, those kind of things. They took 9 of these really, really expensive cars, took off with them, and ultimately law enforcement got wind of it because they all were running out of gas because they don't leave the cars on the lots with a lot of gas. So these guys had to stop off and gas them up. An alert gas station clerk called in. This looks suspicious. We got all these cars with dealer plates. They're all coming to gas up at the same time. And these don't look like people who would own that kind of car. They seem kind of young for that. And law enforcement got in it. There were all sorts of high-speed chases out of that. And nobody's taught the people doing that you can hurt people. You are a human being. And I think they've gotten some notion that this is harmless, that you can't cause any trouble to anybody. You could hurt somebody, and you're going to hate looking yourself in the mirror if that happens. We need to be teaching our kids that lesson, that your actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are irreversible for other people, and you don't want to be responsible for that. It's not just about you could go to prison. There are even worse things than going to prison. There's having to live with you hurt somebody seriously. We have to come back to teaching those values to our kids, and I think that's what's missing. And I don't know, Chris, you guys I assume you're getting the same thing, a lot more high-speed chases when you were a deputy, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing them, and we're seeing, and maybe it's not high-speed chase, but it just taking risks on drugs, on our drug issues. I mean, it's these risks that people take, our kids are taking, and I care about our kids just like you care about all the kids too. I mean, that was our main focus, was victims and kids, and let's try to make a difference. And that's what we have to do. And I don't know how we do that. I mean, we put cops in our schools. You were very fundamental in getting more cops in schools, and the Office of School Safety and all of that goes into that. And I think that's helped. I just met with our school resource officer this morning. He said how much the crime has dropped in the school, and not so much crime, but incidents have dropped in the school. And this was the first year we've been in this school, And he said the incidents have dropped, and it's just been so nice to have this 1 year under our belt now of having a school cop. And it was just, he's like, the difference it made is better for our kids. There's just more kids learning rather than dealing with some dumb things.
Yeah,
Right.
the consequences. And Fitzy and we've talked about this on our shows for our Positive Tuesday. If you're going to go drinking, about having an exit strategy, make that decision before you go out. But to also start thinking about the bigger picture here, like you were talking about. The biggest fear shouldn't be getting an OWI and going to jail or having your booking photo on Dryden Wire, because we publish those. That shouldn't be your biggest fear. Your biggest fear should be hitting a minivan with a mom and her 3 kids and killing 2 of them. That should be your biggest fear.
Right.
But we don't think about that. We're just too busy, thinking about ourselves.
When I was a kid, I was always way more afraid of my dad than I would have been of any police officer.
We need to get that back.
Yeah, we do. Not advocating ruthless beatings. No one should be doing
No,
that.
but dads need to be dads. That's
You should, and you should be afraid of disappointing your dad. I mean, that was for me. My dad did not have to raise his hand to me.
agreed.
It was if I let him down, I disappointed him on something. That was what he needed to have happen.
Yeah.
I've been handling a lot of our juvenile caseload down here, and back in the 90s, I was an assistant DA in juvenile court. Now, as a judge overseeing it, I cannot believe the volume of sexual assaults happening among juveniles. We have changed things in this society. When I was younger, I never saw pornography. It just wasn't accessible to me. There was no way could even get my hands on it. I mean, I remember helping my bachelor uncle move his buddy once, and there was a box of Playboys, and I'm like 13, and what is this?
Right.
My uncle quickly spotted it. He goes, no, put that down, and your mom doesn't find out you saw that. But that's it. But now it's sitting
Anytime you
in
want
their
it.
pocket.
Yeah.
And the stuff they're seeing is unbelievable.
I know.
And I think it's affecting them. These
It
these
can't
kids
not.
that I'm seeing with 12-year-olds who are getting involved in this sexual activity, and some of it's really
It's
really
disgusting.
obscene. And
No, and it's all free. And anytime you want. There's no age check. There's nothing. Just, go ahead.
it's
crazy.
I think it's affecting them. It's eroding kind of their moral stability. And we've got, as parents, we need to be engaged. You got to ask the question, does your 12-year-old really, really need to have, now I just lost the vote of all the 12-year-olds here,
Yep.
but does your 12-year-old really need to have a smartphone?
Yeah.
Do they really need to have access to that stuff? Because it's there. They're going to see it. You can't control it. You can put all sorts of apps that limit their access to it. The people that purvey this stuff online, they're constantly ahead of us. They're constantly finding a new way. There's ways around it. I mean, kids now, when we were younger, we couldn't take naked videos of ourselves. We couldn't share that with somebody else. You had to take a photo with a camera and take it to the photo match store.
Right.
And,
How
and
awkward is that? That'd be, wow.
Yeah, you're not getting those photos back, kid.
Right.
Now they just can do it. We really need to pay closer attention to them.
We do.
When we were kids, maybe more for you, Chris, and but you'd hear from our parents and grandparents. They'd say stuff like, you kids have it so easy. When I was your age, I had to walk uphill both ways to school, and the snow was 5 feet tall, and all that stuff. I would never say that to kids now, because in so many ways they have it way harder than anything we ever imagined. Because like when I was in school, if I wanted to avoid a bully, just don't sit at that table at lunch. Don't sit on that part of the bus. If you see they're in the men's room, hold it for a little while. Go in later. Now the bully can follow them right into their bedroom. I mean, in their most private spaces, right there. And the bullying is so different. And these kids are so affected by it. And like I said, the pornography, and then the drugs that are out there for them that Chris was talking about. I mean, you could make 40, 50 years ago, you could make a mistake. You could try drugs. You'd live to regret it. I mean, that's an old saying that a lot of times people don't get to say anymore. They don't get to say, well, I lived to regret that mistake. A lot of times they're not living to regret it. And it's not fair what our kids are doing now. We're forcing them to grow up so fast.
Yeah.
And we got to help them try to stay kids longer. I think those school resource officers that you were talking about, Chris, is a great help to that. Um, it's not just for safety in the school. That is important too, though. So teachers can just teach and not worry about discipline things with a kid that's physically causing trouble. But it's also, it gives kids a different impression of a law enforcement officer. You're watching on TV, they always put the dramatic stuff, where it's a big fight, where it's this or that, and they don't see that the vast majority of a law enforcement officer's time is spent talking to people, solving problems, not reaching for the handcuffs, finding a way that it's not going to end that way today, and giving another chance. School resource officers give kids a chance to see that personal interaction. I had cases back in my prosecutor days where kids had come forward to report some kind of neglect or abuse in their home that they never would have said anything to anybody, but they told us, I remembered my DARE officer and I trusted him, and I went to seek that person out and told them about it. And that kid got the help they needed, and there wasn't going to be any other way. They didn't know any other means to do it, but they had somebody there they learned to trust that way. So I love the idea of having law enforcement officers working in our schools.
Yes.
Besides, you've got a high school. There might be 1,500 kids in that high school. That's a small community. I mean, there's a lot of. They have a police department for 1,500 people. Why wouldn't you have that in your school?
Yeah,
exactly
and that stuff is
how
true.
I looked at it. Yeah,
little things do make a big difference. So, Dirk, if you're still watching, give us the weather report. We have our official weatherman. No, I don't think DARE still is a thing. I think that went away a while ago.
There's still a national DARE, but it didn't evolve, and we needed to concentrate on other things. So
maybe that's
DARE
what it was.
still there, but school cops are doing different things in different schools.
All right. So before we get to our weather report from our official weatherman for the show, Dirk Miller, you said that you have been going to, what was it, 4 counties a weekend, right?
Yeah, it's about average.
So far, have you any feedback, any good stories, anything going on so far? Anything stand out?
The feedback's really positive. I haven't seen the rooms this full of people and energy probably since 2012. People are seeing things they don't like, and they know that some change is necessary, and people are receptive. Even though I'm in this Supreme Court race so ridiculously far out in advance, people are already supportive. They get it. They understand why I'm in this early, and they're good. I do want to share. I had an experience on Saturday that I think is a first for a politician anywhere. We had been to. We started out the day in. I had an event in Waukesha, and then we were up to Fond du Lac County, and then Eau Claire County, and then I finished the day up in St. Croix County.
Oh, sure. That's not far from it. Right.
Yeah. And I never followed this before. I got there. They were running a little behind. And usually there's other speakers that go before me and stuff.
Right.
Well, right immediately before me was a ventriloquist. I don't think any politician anywhere has ever had to follow a ventriloquist before their remarks. And it's a little weird because you got to go up. You got a comedian with, I think his dummy was Mr. Grumpy or something like that. So you're kind of doing the joking back and forth about grumpy old man stuff. And I got to get up and follow that. I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do with this crowd? And
like 5 minutes into it, are they yelling like, "You're not funny"?
Yeah,
like,
right?
Are they expecting you to be funny?
I knew I had to be funny, so I got up there and I just started telling some jokes, throwing some red meat, and I think I got him. Who knows?
That's a ventriloquist. Fitzy, when you're on the campaign trail, you're going to have to let us know if you run into that. The weather, part 1, warm this morning, falling temps, high, low to mid-50s, some light snow later in the afternoon. Wow, that's weird to see. Half an inch maybe this evening. Colder tonight, tomorrow, lows 5 to 10. Wow, it's like February or something.
Cold tomorrow.
Yep, and then the upcoming, I should say, the future cast. Temps will be warming back up, dry conditions, 40s and 50s, or close to 60 on Saturday. What? All right, where are you heading this weekend, Brad?
Oh, I know I've got Dane County and Wood County. I'm up there for sure. I got to think more about it. I have to look at the calendar. It's hard to plan it. We just
give us a break, Ben.
Somebody lets me know where to be.
It's only Tuesday. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So I'm up in Wisconsin Rapids on Saturday, and I know I'm in somewhere in Dane County Friday night.
So you're April of 2025. Is that when your election is?
Well,
Yeah.
Could be February, technically.
Yeah, if there's a primary, it could be February.
There's a primary. So you got 1 year. So now we're under a year. So I don't think there'll be a primary, but we'll have April of 2025. Okay. Yeah. So, well, good luck, Brad. I appreciate you being on the show, talking to us. Thank you for all the support you give law enforcement all those years as the DOJ head of it and the Attorney General. I mean, you had a great staff. They helped us tremendously with a lot of cases. So can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us in Northwest Wisconsin.
That was incredible. That was an incredible honor for me to have had that opportunity. I'm grateful to the voters that gave me the chance to do that. Chris, please give my best to your whole team. Yep. I think about our first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS. Think about you and pray for you guys every day, and I hope you'll be safe out there.
We will appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Brad.
Thank you, guys,
for coming on. For Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, I'm Ben Dryden, and you've been watching Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy, presented by Professional Exteriors and Interiors. With 20 years of experience, this locally owned and operated business provides quality work both on the inside and on the outside of your home or business. Give them a call today. See what they can do for you. The number's right there on the screen. Special thank you to former Wisconsin Attorney General, current Waukesha County Judge, and candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court, Brad Schimel, for jumping on and having a chat with us today. This is all, I think, for this week. No, we have one more guest next week. Fitzy, who are we having on next week?
Jen Jekyll from ADRC.
ADRC. There we go. So that'll be next week. So until then, thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day. Nope, and Brad's gone.